Hello, everyone.
I'm Carl,
And I'm Em.
and welcome to our podcast discussing all of the latest books. This is season 3, episode
8.
and today we are discussing Love Theoretically by Ali Hazlewood. As always, we'll save our ratings until the very end.
We promise to give you all of our honest opinions on all the characters, chapters, and scenarios. We don't mean any harm to any of the authors. This is solely our opinion. And as always, we promise to Karl and like we read them.
Period. So, some trigger warnings for this book include explicit sexual content on the page. It's not throughout the entire book. Towards the end, there is some sexual content. However, throughout the entire book is like a misogynistic, sexist view. The main female character is a woman in STEM, and so I'm sure as any woman in a man's world will understand, that's a very common theme in this book. And then there's also a mixture of some like grief and death, and then issues with parents and family members. So, as always, take care of yourselves, and spoilers will lie ahead.
If you don't want to hear how this book ends, please pause here and go read the book and then come back to this episode. Are you ready to get started?
Let's get into it. All right, so the blurb for this book is this. The many lives of theoretical physicist Elsie Hanaway have finally caught up with her. By day, she's an adjunct professor, toiling away at grading labs and teaching thermodynamics in the hopes of landing tenure. By other day, Elsie makes up for her non-existent paycheck by offering her services as a fake girlfriend, tapping into her expertly honed people-pleasing skills to embody whichever version of herself the client needs. Honestly, it's a pretty sweet gig, until her carefully constructed Elsieverse comes crashing down. Because Jack Smith, the annoyingly attractive and arrogant elder brother of her favorite client, turns out to be the cold-hearted experimental physicist who ruined her mentor's career and undermined the reputation of theorists everywhere. And he's the same Jack Smith who rules over the physics department at MIT, standing right between Elsie and her dream job. Elsie is prepared for an all-out war of scholarly sabotage, but those long, penetrating looks, not having to be anything other than her true self when she's with him, will falling into an experimentalist's orbit finally tempt her to put her most guarded theories on love into practice.
All right, so welcome back, guys. So to pick up where we left off with the last
Sorry.
we kind of just talked about how, well, I mainly talked about how I was not excited about how Elsie seems, but we are at the point where Jack and Elsie have visited his grandma, and she's learned more about why he's wrote the letter to the editor as he had. He's also at this point offered her a position, and she has declined because she thinks it would let down her mentor for working underneath Jack. So
I will, just to kick us off, I would have loved to have seen, in the last episode we talked about, like, if she'd actually gotten the position at MIT and then them work together, but it also would have been cool to see, like, her work underneath him and see that sort of aspect. That would have been kind of hot, too. Like, the tension in the workspace and, like, and him being like, you work for me, so, like, it's forbidden, kind of, you know what I mean? Like,
well, honestly, I think that would have been a good place to like her realize her worth, because she may like disagree with something that he's got and her go toe to toe with him, and just like her refusing to back down. Like, I think that would have been an absolute like a better way of her figuring out herself for sure.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I can just see them like, you know me, everything like has to build up the sexual tension and then they just go at it. But in my brain, I'm like picturing them in the lab and like he's telling her like she needs to do it this way, and she's like, "No, it's my work. I'm gonna do it this way."
Mm-hmm.
And then they're just bickering until they get so close, and then they just start kissing.
And honestly, would have made it better.
I don't know. That's what I'm picturing. I do love a rivals to lovers though. Like it's not as good as an enemies to lover when we're holding daggers to each other's throat, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close.
I have to say, like, I think the biggest letdown of this was something like not like that. Like, I think, to be honest, that whole storyline would have made this 10 times better. Like, because I think we built up this like enemies to lovers, and then all of a sudden we weren't enemies to lovers. He was just all of a sudden being like, okay, well, you know, here, I'm on your side now. Like, we're in love. And it just like, we didn't ever get like that, like maybe accidental where they like build up the tension, they kiss, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I hate you for making me, want to kiss you. And then like
Yeah.
they're just like tiptoeing around each other in the lab for weeks, trying not to get close enough where they don't kiss again. And then,
Yeah.
even for the fact that like with her mentor relationship, we could have had an aspect where maybe he was like, oh, I've already got Monica on the inside, now I've got you, we can bring him down even quicker, or, something like that. And then
Yeah.
turns out like he ends up finding out that she's doing that, and it creates this big hostile situation. Like there was so many different ways that we could have done that, but like I think the biggest mistake she made was not giving her that position.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't feel like we got anything out of it otherwise.
I will say I did like that she actually ended up working for George though instead of him. I also like that aspect that this like she's not relying on Jack to give her a job. Like she
I
got it on her own merit.
I did, but we didn't really even get much of that either. Like we didn't.
That's fair. It was very just short at the end. We just got
Yeah,
it like a oh this is where it's going to go in the future, but we don't get to see it sort of thing.
yeah. It was just like, I
Yeah.
mean, if she would have accepted it when the first time when she was offered it, like I would have loved to see that. Or like maybe George gets the job she initially hires for, and then she ends up deciding to work under Jack, and then all of a sudden, like she decides that she needs to go work for George instead because her and Jack can't work together because there's too much sexual tension built up, and like she's got to separate herself. Or
I would have liked to have seen like George and Jack almost like kind of like not fight over her, but like go back and forth and try to like woo her into accepting one of their
yeah,
positions. Like that become a little bit of a plot.
yeah. Like there's just so
Because like
many.
he would be like taking her on a date and like, who knows what he's doing after the date. And George is like, how supposed to compete with that? I don't know. I feel like it would have been hilarious to like watch George try to convince her at the same
Yeah.
time as like watching Jack be like so into it and like this little competition over her. And I think that would have like helped her ego a little bit too. Like,
Mhm.
oh, like I really am a competitive candidate and I'm not just second best, like
Yeah.
settling for it. But and like really put it in her mentor's face that these two extremely well known and talented and intelligent are fighting over me.
Yeah.
Like, so but
And especially somebody in the opposite field in which she's in, like
correct, even
would
more
have
so.
been, yeah. I
Yeah.
definitely think there's about 20 different ways it could have been wrote better, to be
Yeah.
honest, with a
I-
lot of that.
Yeah, we've come up with some really good ideas.
Yeah. We always do.
Which is easier said than done. Sorry, because hindsight is always 2020. So like
Yeah.
reading the whole book, then we can nitpick it. But if we were actually writing it, we might not have written it the way we even suggested. So
I
we don't know.
mean, publishers could use us.
I'm
Hello.
just saying, y'all need some editors.
We'll definitely make your books some bestsellers, that's for sure.
Just brace your feelings.
Well, that, and I mean, we may have to include a couple of reverse harems just to appease somebody else, but
I'm dead.
But we end up getting back into where her mentor is very furious that she was chose under or over the other candidate, and apparently he doesn't even know who George is. And
Which I think is a lie, and him just being like manipulative and dismissive of another woman.
well, that, and it just, for the fact as well, she is just like, hey, I'm just gonna apply for some other jobs. And he almost like gets offended. He's like, what do you mean, like you already have several other jobs? And I'm just like, okay, but you just wanted her to apply for another job, so you know what I mean? It's just,
It's because it's not the job he wants her to apply for. He wants her teaching, not doing research. And I simply think that is because she's better than him.
yeah.
But she doesn't understand that yet. I don't know. We said it the last episode, and I'll say it this episode. I have a hard time relating to a woman, especially a woman that we're setting up to be like an intelligent woman, letting a man tell her what to do. It's an ick.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it's like, it might kill you doing what he wants you to do.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, the fact she was letting him is my biggest problem. I mean, she legitly just like was just gonna let him kill her basically just because she didn't want to go against him. And
She didn't even like, I don't even feel like she even attempted really to advocate for herself. That
mm-mm.
bothered me. Which, and don't get me wrong, like, It happens. 1,000% it happens. And I know there are plenty of women out there in the world and men who let their partner or their mentor or whatever control what they do. But it just, for me, it disconnected me from her because of that.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to like her.
I wanted to like her just because I want to be able to connect with the character. But I think the biggest thing to me was, again, there were so many different problems she was have. I couldn't latch onto just one for me to ever connect with her. Like, it just, I know we've said this about past books. It just felt like, let's just throw every idea out there to make the storyline, but like, let's not connect the dots between any of them. And I think you and I are very similar in the fact that we both, study criminology and stuff. So like, all the dots have to connect at some point, almost like a case. Like, we have to be able to like draw the strings and connect the dots. And like, to
Yeah.
me, it just is like, as soon as I was getting ready to connect a string to another dot, it just, we couldn't. And so then I just have a string just hanging there, and then like at the end of the book, we're just like really quickly tie the string and we're done. And it's just like, that's not a satisfying thing for me, because I have to know the whys, the whos, the whats. And I think it was just, there were so many different storylines we try to play with that it was impossible to give all of that information because there was just too much.
Yeah, that's fair.
And honestly, like, the mentor mentee relationship, I feel like we almost didn't even really need to have that. I get why we had it, as far as with the people pleasing storyline. But I think we could have just gotten where she applied for that job and got it, and then we had like that tension situation. And yeah, we could have had like a struggle, like I said, maybe like her father was in that field and maybe had influenced her to go into that field and she didn't really like that field, or something along that lines. But I or she maybe had a health struggle like halfway through the end of the book. Like, we really played on the health situation. She could have had a major health problem, or his grandma could have passed away. I mean, something that we could have had, that tragic third act situation that we could have ended up like at the same kind of start, but with more of like a connection to the characters. Like I said, with even Jack, like, I don't feel like we got the full extent of what he could have been for her, because I think there was just so much going on with her personally that we could have eliminated about 3 or 4 of those, and we influenced Jack into a situation where they were kind of the forced proximity like trope, where we had to like force them to be together in a way. It maybe her dad could have been working with Jack, and he thought a man could be better than a woman. We could have still played on that misogynistic storyline. And then Elsie has worked her whole entire life to prove herself that she could be just as good as the men in that field, and she gets there and Jack kind of challenges that a little bit. There's so many different ways we could have ended up with the same solution, but with more of a connection to the characters. And I think that they're all important subjects, but I think that we could have narrowed it down to 2 or 3, maybe even 4, and it would have had the same impact, maybe even stronger of an impact. So,
That's fair.
and I mean, even when we meet the friends, we seem to get sort of like where there are these strong, independent women, and Elsie's kind of influenced by that and kind of encouraged by that. But at the same time, she doesn't seem to recognize that she could be that for herself. So it was almost just like a point that was in there that wasn't fully elaborated on. Because I mean, like Olive, for example, she talks about how she's big in her field, and like how difficult it is to be a woman in STEM, and like she talks about her struggles, and Elsie's kind of just like, oh yeah, their struggles. It wasn't like, okay, yeah, this is what I've been going through, help me navigate how you overcame that. We could have had a very important discussion there about that kind of situation, but then we end up turning that whole entire party into a conversation about how Jack doesn't date because he just wants to have sex, kind of situation. Which, honestly, another reason that bothered me is that Jack didn't seem like the kind of guy that just had sex either. Like, it was just like,
I agree.
there was just several different character problems that I just didn't see where I could connect with any of them. So,
Well, and like, so Olive's experiences, and I only know this again because I've read the book,
mhm.
but her experiences were more of like sexual harassment, which is obviously like much clearer of an issue than like the mentor manipulative. Like, it
Yeah.
wasn't it's not so obvious that your mentor is ruining your career as it is obviously if someone's sexually harassing.
Yeah.
So, I think that was, like, just an ode to, like, referencing them, and I do think it should have been a little bit more explained in this book because not everybody has read The Love Hypothesis.
Yeah. And honestly, if it was something
But, like,
like that,
it made
I
me
feel like
really
it
happy to see them
I think it should have been influenced as
at
like,
a wedding.
hey, this is a standalone book, but it's an interconnected series. Like I feel like I didn't
It's
know that.
technically not an interconnected series, though. You just see them visit for real quickly in this book, but it's not interconnected because they don't like their programs aren't the same. The school's not the same. They don't. It does not.
But
You don't learn anything about them, but it
it
could have
could have
been. Yeah,
been. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Agree. There could have been like a conference or something that they go to, and like that's where they run into them, and that's where whatever.
Yeah.
Because Olive and Adam do actually go to a conference in their book, but I think that was just like a she knew the people who have read it like would want to see them again and like talk about here's them in the future sort of thing, like talking about getting married or whatever. But I agree that it should have been a little bit better explained if we were just going to briefly pop them up.
Well, and even with that, we end up adding in the Andy character and different things like that. And I mean, we had another character that we got influenced to be introduced to, and then all of a sudden, like, there's no importance of why we got introduced. And like, if you wouldn't have told me that she was in the other book, I would have never known. I'm like, okay, well, why did we bring this character into this situation? Which is what my thoughts were when I read it. I'm like, okay,
Who's Andy isn't one of them.
no, I'm just talking about like just we have another character
Oh,
that was
gotcha.
added that there really wasn't a reason for the storyline to be there.
Gotcha. 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 Okay.
Like I get
Yeah,
the
Andy was.
conversation that Andy had with Jack at that one point of like, what are you doing? Why are you, getting this situation with her? But at the same time, like we could have done that with George, or we could have even done that with Olive, or we could have done that with some other character that's been influenced, or even hell, the grandma. She could have been like, "Hey, you don't date. Like, what's going on here?" But it just we've introduced all these characters, and we just get like one conversation with that character, and then we're done with that character, and it's just like, okay, but why even introduce them if we're just gonna have one conversation about that?
Well, and I agree with you that it was out of character for Jack to be somebody that just like sleeps around,
Yeah,
and so then introducing Andy just to do that part was like, what was the point of that?
yeah.
But
I have to say, I think my biggest thing, and I mean, kudos to Rebecca Yarros, I guess, but she, with her background characters in Fourth Wing, I guess just have influenced me to like, I want more out of my background characters. Like, if that makes any sense, because like every book I've read since, I'm just like, okay, what's the point of adding this character if you're not going to even do anything with them? Because no matter who the background characters were in her book in some sort of way, they're always important in some way. I mean, even Hell the Dragon, the one-eyed dragon, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he becomes a big influence in the second book. There's just different.
that's how Throne of Glass is too. Like, you don't realize it when they're first introduced. You're kind of like, okay, this is somebody else. Like, do I need to know them? Do I not need to know them? But like by the end of the book, you're like, holy
Yeah,
crap! Like this, here's all the connections and like how we built up to that. Like it's like a crime scene investigation with the strings and everything. But I I guess because this isn't a series, that's why we're like the side characters can be kept to a minimum because they're not important.
yeah,
But it's because it's not a series that they're not important. But in this scenario, like Andy wasn't important, George really probably wasn't either, unless we had done like the fighting over her a little bit more or something, or if she was the angry ex or whatever, and then she ended up working for her, that'd have been hilarious. But anyways,
just the grandma,
yeah, like none of them were really
Monica's
that important.
son.
Honestly, not even the storyline about her being with Greg. Like we could have just said she was a fake date to one of his friends one time or something and
Yeah,
moved past it. Like it didn't need to be. But but again, because I think maybe it's not a series that we're sort of like expecting more. We want more. We
yeah.
don't get more.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So we do get a point where Elsie does try to stand up to her mother when she calls about her brother, and her mother ends up hanging up on her. Um, but she kind of just tells Jack about how her mom always expects her to fix the issues and all that kind of stuff. And instead of really kind of like encouraging her how to stand up for herself, he invites her to dinner and just like hopes to like distract her from it. And you know, he agrees to watch Twilight with her, which, I mean, after we've reread the books, the movies are much better. So,
I was just telling somebody this the other day. I was like, please do not reread that as an adult
uh,
because you will hate
yeah.
it. I tried.
Yeah,
Because they're talking about Hunger Games, that the new one coming out. And I was like, I need to read them. I've never read them. And they were like, oh my gosh, are you serious? Like that in Twilight, I loved it. And I was like, well, let me tell you, don't reread
mhm,
Twilight
no.
because that was messed up.
Well, and honestly, it's made me not want to reread Harry Potter because I'm afraid that I'm going to hate Harry Potter. So,
Yeah, like I never read the Divergent series either. And like I would like to at some point in my life. And I'm scared that I'm going to read that in Hunger Games and be like, this is terrible.
so I've read both of them, and I mean, obviously, it's been years since I read either. Actually, I think I read Divergent before the movies came out. So, like, I kind of knew what was going to happen, but I don't think I probably would like it equally as which I did. But I also really liked the Hunger Game movies, and people did not. So,
I really liked Hunger Games. I will say, like, as it went, like the first one is my favorite one.
yes.
But I did like them.
Well, the
I
thing
really I really liked Divergent though. I really liked that one.
I liked Divergent too. Like, a lot of people seem to have a problem with Divergent, especially. But I mean, to me, it didn't seem honestly that bad. Now, I do have to say the last one I was kind of disappointed in, but I mean, honestly, Theo James, as long as he was there, I didn't care.
Well, and I love Shailene too. Like I
Yes.
just and then I liked another one that is like along those lines is Maze Runner.
Yes, I liked
I
Maze
liked
Runner.
those too.
I wish they did a second movie of Maze Runner. Or a third movie. Was it a third movie?
Third, I think. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think they did two, but I don't think they did third one.
Because I
I
think
know
there's
I'm pretty sure they did two.
I think there's 4 or 5 books in the Maze Runner series, which I have not read the book, so I don't know as far as the context of that. But I love Dylan O'Brien. Like, anything he's in, I'll
Yes.
watch. So
1,000%.
they do end up kissing, and the two of them kind of argue because Elsie thinks that Jack doesn't want to have sex with her. And he's just like, it's too soon. You're only wanting to do this to kind of please me, kind of the people pleaser kind of thing. And so she gets kind of angry, but he does say that, like, once you figure out what you want and what you need, then we can talk about it. So they do end up going to lunch with Greg, and Elsie kind of does talk about how easy it is to be around them, which she always kind of had kind of like a brotherly kind of love with Greg. But she does end up staying the night with Jack, and she does admit that, like, she knows what she wants out of the relationship, knows what she expects. And so they do end up having sex for the first time. And she thinks that she's pretty happy and everything, but she does say that she needs to go home because she needs to change her insulin pod. But he kind of, on the way, she asks him about his mother and kind of like that relationship because, she found out the information from his grandma. He describes that basically there was issues with his mother and a lead researcher in her group who was very controlling and like wouldn't allow her to come back to work after she had Jack. And so she kind of daydreams a little bit about what it would be to accept George's job offer and kind of where that would end up leading.
Can I just
Um,
add that him wanting to learn how to change out her pod and like help take care of her,
that was very sweet.
so hot.
I did like it because she also said that, like, previously, like, people had been disgusted by it, and like he was just like, no, don't leave, like, let me help you. So it was kind of sweet. I did also really enjoy when they get to the game night at George's, when they're having some kind of tournament, which I've never heard of this game, so I'm not sure what all it
You've never heard of
entails.
Go?
No.
Emily. Yes, you have. You just probably don't realize.
I mean, possibly, but
Hang on. It's that game. The little white and black dots that you have to move around.
I don't recognize it.
That's crazy.
Okay, so George kind of corners Elsie at this party and, asks her if she's going to accept. And she says that she has to get her mentor's approval, which basically George does kind of say, like, you don't need his approval. It's your life. And she's like, no, I owe everything to him, which she ends up finding out that's not true. But Elsie kind of overhears a conversation with Andrea at this party, and she thinks that Jax somewhat still despises her for being a theorist. And she kind of says that she's reminded why she didn't, like him in the first place. And Elsie finally confronts the elephant in the room after quite some time and asks him why he wrote that article in the first place. And, Elsie calls her mentor as an unintentional victim, and Jack says, no, he wasn't unintentional. He was the main target. And he describes that basically he was the mentor that he had talked about earlier that had forced his mom basically out of physics because he was jealous and he wanted to control her. And so he wrote the article because the university refused to do anything because he wasn't the direct victim of the problem. And
And the
so,
victim was already dead at that
yeah.
point.
And so Elsie kind of does reflect to him that, how much impact it had on her and her life. And she's very furious and just asks him to leave. He does agree to do so, but she does end up finally meeting up with her mentor. And he calls her a silly, stubborn little girl when she describes that she's trying to take on this opportunity. And she talks about everything, and he finally ends up admitting that he's the reason why she didn't get some of the other opportunities. And he refuses to even talk about the Turner, which is Jack's mom. He refuses to talk about her and walks out very strongly and says, like, you should really start calling me by my actual name. And I was very proud of her that she did end up emailing the university and filing a complaint against him. I think that was very brave of her, especially as a woman in any kind of field, but also in the fact that, she was willing to stand up to him and not take his crap, which sadly is what kind of Jack's mom kind of did in that aspect. So,
Well, I think it was important too because who else is he mentoring?
yes.
You
Yeah.
know, and like
Or
that needs to
could
be
mentor in the future.
yeah, that needs to be addressed. I will say this. The fact that 17-year-old Jack wrote an article so well, like this whole revenge plot,
Yeah,
like he did so good. Like honestly, like I have to give credit where credit is due.
he did.
I couldn't be mad at him if it was me because I'd be like, "You did a great job. You did a great job. I don't agree with what you did, but you did a great job doing it."
Well, and I think it's important to also mention that he did end up writing an article, referring to the published one, and he's like, hey, like I didn't think about who else it would affect along with the person I was aiming it for. And so, and
We love accountability. That's hot.
yeah, and he did admit like he doesn't think anything less than the field, and he feels like he brought down the field because of, the article and things like that. So I did really appreciate that. I do also appreciate that Elsie does decide to accept George's offer because she wants to do something for herself for once. I
Agreed.
did not like the whole storyline where she exposed to Cece that she didn't like any of her stories and like Twilight's her favorite movie and all that kind of stuff. I just felt like it was kind of dumb. I mean, I don't know. It
I
just,
get the whole like I'm gonna actually be myself now, but
yeah.
at the same time, like I told you earlier, if all of a sudden you told me that everything that you had lied to me and said you liked, you didn't actually like, and you liked all of these other things that we talked about and said were atrocious for so long, I would literally be like, I don't even know who you are.
Well, first of all, you would never get me lying about anything to try to make like I'm
Yeah,
going to tell
we're not those
you.
kind of people.
I'm
We're
going to
not.
tell you like this is the stupidest thing you've ever made me
Yeah,
do. Like,
we're not those kind of people.
no.
But I think like you can't really have a true friendship if you won't even tell me that you dislike this movie that I
Yeah.
just put on. Like that's crazy.
And honestly,
So
you've
that bothered
you've
me a little bit.
you've asked me to read some pretty stupid books, and I've allowed you to allow me to do that. So
And vice versa.
yes, and I'm going to tell you they're stupid, and that's okay. This is
We
this is one of them, but
this one wasn't as bad as some of the other ones.
honestly, it's not probably the worst one you've ever had.
You made me read The Twin. We will never get over that. To this
Okay.
day, if someone says, "What's a book that you hated?" I'm like, The Twin. Let me tell you about it.
Lovely bones for me.
Which that wasn't like a I loved it and I wanted you to read it. That was I just wanted to read it because I'd never read it,
Yeah,
and it ended up not being that great either. So I agree on that one. But and then like Say You Swear, obviously you really liked that one.
yeah.
It wasn't it for me.
It
That's
wasn't
okay.
terrible though.
We can agree to disagree. But I cannot picture that, having a friend that acts like they're so into it when they're not.
Yeah.
Especially like such a like niche thing. Like those films were like a very specific type of person would like them. They weren't like Twilight everybody likes.
Yeah.
Except for a select few people who think they're cool because they hate it. But like these were very niche, like a minority would like them. So it
Yeah.
wasn't even like it was like to go along with the crowd saying you liked them. You're going against the crowd probably saying you liked them.
Yeah.
But then but you're doing that on purpose
But
and
she
having
also
movie
like
marathons.
researched stuff about it to be able to talk about it in a conversation with her too. So like she
That's
took it to a
crazy.
whole different extreme.
Yeah.
Honestly, I
Yeah.
don't think we
Too
could be
far.
friends if you ever did that. Like after that, and
No,
not for the
because who
simple fact
are
that
you? I don't even know who you are anymore.
well, not for the simple fact that you lied to me, but the fact that you can't be a strong, independent woman and tell me you didn't like the movie. Like that, I would respect you after that, to be honest. Like, if you can't tell me about a movie, like, what else are you going to sit there and lie? Are you going to tell me that I look pretty in a hot pink wedding dress? Like, hell no. Like, I don't
No.
trust your opinion anymore.
Yeah. You don't worry about that because that will not be me.
I
Okay.
know it won't, but I'm
One
just
thing about
saying.
me is I'm gonna tell you what I think. I saw something that posted the other day, and they were like, "If when I say, do you want me to be honest? Your answer should be no,
Yeah.
because you're not gonna like what comes out next if you say yes."
Well, usually whenever I ask your opinion, like or you ask my opinion, I'm usually like, what level of honesty do you want out of me? Do you want me to hurt
Yeah,
your feelings, or do you want me to
yeah.
tell
Are
you
you
like
seeking validation or are you
yeah,
seeking criticism?
yeah? Like
What are we doing here?
that's always our question between the two because we want to
Yeah,
make sure we gauge how we're looking for a response. So
yeah,
and
yeah.
honestly, that's why I come to you with a lot of the decisions because I know you're going to say it, whether it's going to hurt my feelings or not. Because like I'm like on the fence about it. I'm like, should I do this or not? Like the whole wallpaper situation. I'm like, hey, what do you want? And you're like, honestly, I'm too drunk right now to give you my honest opinion. So I was
I
like,
I
valid,
was too. I
valid.
was plastered. Let me tell you, I haven't been that drunk in a while.
But like honestly, I was like, I don't care because you as drunk is going to give me your unfiltered opinion. So tell me. So
Yeah, me drunk is worse. I
yeah,
mean, I'm already pretty bad sober, but me drunk is like I will yell at you across the room in front of everybody instead of doing it in a corner privately
yeah.
when I'm sober. So, yeah.
But like that's always like how our friendship has been though. Like what level
Yeah.
of honesty do you want? Like,
Yeah.
there's like three different levels, like extreme, middle ground, and then like, okay, I'll just fluff it to make you not which honestly as women our feelings are fluctuated, so it's kind of a good thing we do that because like sometimes you could hurt my feelings if I was in a different time of the month and
Yeah.
I probably would hate you for like 3 weeks. But
Well, I think we're good about like and in this context like is the movie that big of a deal? I think so. It would have hurt my feelings if someone had told me all this time that they loved all these things just to like connect somehow, but like really they hated it and were miserable the entire time. Like, why are we even friends?
Well,
But
I
this
think the part
idea,
as far as that goes, though, what would hurt me is the fact that like I would get excited that you liked it so much that I would be like, oh my gosh, like I finally have somebody that I can connect with this instead of going to find somebody I actually could connect with. I'm like
yeah,
putting all of this like expectation into that. Like with, Fourth Wing, I was really nervous for you to read it, but I really wanted you to read it because I wanted somebody to talk to about it. And so like if you would have lied to me and been like, yeah, it's the greatest thing ever. And I'm like literally for now a year later still sending you things like, look at this. And you're like
yeah.
secretly hating it the whole time.
I would have came clean if I
Yeah.
lied about that because I can't do that. See,
Yeah.
but that's just my personality. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not writing it out that long.
But I feel like
But
that's
like,
what they did though. Like
yes, I
Elsie
agree.
did that for her. It's like, I
Yeah,
mean, it wouldn't surprise me if it was like a Comic-Con thing. She would have like shown up in costume at a Comic-Con because of her dedication to like lying about this. So
I agree, and that would have bothered me as well. I think though, like obviously, like more important things you should like we're good about like if it's something that is serious enough it's like listen this might hurt your feelings but I need to tell you this is a bad
yeah.
idea or like you should not have done that or whatever like we're good also about calling like accountability like
Yeah.
saying like okay listen nobody else is going to tell you this but I'm going to tell you this is
Yeah.
not right but like they didn't I don't feel like they did that a lot so like their friendship to me was sort of like it's like that I don't know, it's like because it's like the person you share a dorm with. Like you're
Yeah.
friends because you live together, but do you really know each other kind of vibe, you know? But I also think that this idea of like I have to pretend to like what you like to bond.
Mm-hmm.
You don't though. Like I can tell you like these movies are not necessarily my favorite movie, but if you want to have a movie marathon, I can still sit through those movies every once in a while and watch
Yeah.
them because we're friends and that's what you do for friends or what you know what I'm saying like
Yeah.
so it kind of like felt like really undermined the identity like of friendships in general to be like, "Oh, I have to lie about it."
Yeah.
You don't though. You could tell her that it's not your favorite thing ever, but you're still willing to sit through a movie marathon with her every once in a while. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like cuz it's compromise. That's in any relationship you have to compromise.
I mean,
So, I don't
literally,
know.
what we started our entire friendship on was just the fact we worked together, and like
Mhm.
it was something so trivial, but at the same time, then over time, we found other things that we relate to, and like, I mean, we're still not similar in a lot of ways, but at the same
Mhm.
time, like, there's like 4 or 5 things that we relate to that, you know, books obviously one of them, but
Yeah. But I think that's also like what makes a friendship or a relationship
yeah,
better. I don't want to be the same as you. I mean, I could hang out by myself. I want to be this. If I just wanted someone to tell me everything I like to hear, I'd just tell
yeah.
myself that. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't need that. So
No, I don't think I would like to hang out with you if you were the same person as me.
no, me either.
I can't
I
believe
wouldn't.
enough of
I
you.
wouldn't want a second Carly either.
All right, so she does end up going to Jack to apologize about everything, and he was just like, "Hey, I haven't come to see you because, I wanted to give you the space you were asking for." And she's like, I was, trying to be completely honest with you. She tells him the things that she's mad about. Her mom's calling. She does pick up the phone and just like tells her to stop calling her. She does tell Jack that she accepted George's offer and that she still hates him, but she has feelings for him too. And he tells her that the only thing he wants is to spend his life with her. And she admits that she's not ready for that yet, which he does say, like, I promise I'll wait for you as long as it takes.
I think it's super cute.
We do end up getting in the epilogue where she has moved in with him. So, what is your final thoughts and rating?
Great question. When I finished it, I was enamored. And so on Fable, I rated it a 5. I think after reviewing today, I think I would give it a 4.7. Take off just a little bit for some things that I think I agree could have been wrapped up better and just connected better throughout the story so that it was cohesive from beginning to end. I will say though that I did really like it still. I love a woman in STEM that automatically just boost it for me anyways. And then I really like Jack and the way that he cared for her and like the way that he loved her. Loved him. So that helped me ignore some of the other things that I might not have liked about the book. But what about
I
you?
did rate it a 3.25, but it's solely based on the ending rather than the book as a whole. I did not like the book, though, as a whole. I think there was just so much that was put into it that made it unenjoyable. I think it was almost like we had like 17 main characters that we had to keep up with, and they were all different versions of the same person because there was
You rated
different
it a
things.
3.75 on Fable.
I did, but now reflecting back on it, it's
Okay.
a 3.25. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to clear. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the
Um
clarification.
I just like, to me, like, it just, there's just so much to it, and like at the end of the book I did really enjoy how it ended. Like, I felt like it was like a classic love story and everything, but just like reflecting back on it, like, I really don't think I connected with any of the characters. I don't think I connected with any of the storylines. Like, I love the concept of the book, like a woman in STEM, like her going through misogynistic storyline, like, absolutely happens every single day. Like, love that she was trying to fight, that kind of fight, but at the same time, like, I don't feel like she fought it. Like, I feel like it was just kind of like she accepted it was happening to her, and then all of a sudden a man came in, made her realize that that was happening, and then all of a sudden she's like, oh, I'm a woman, I need to stand up for myself. But like, I had a problem with the fact that, like, I didn't feel like Jack was supporting her. I felt like he was pushing her to come to that conclusion. And like, yes, I love that he was, able to help her realize that. That's great. But at the same time, like, I would kind of like her to be more of a strong, independent woman, I guess is the best way of saying it. Like, I felt like she just relied so much on other people the entire book all the way to the end. And basically the final like 2 to 3 chapters, I felt like we finally got like that strong, independent woman, and I didn't get enough of that for me to really connect to her. Like, if we would have gotten her kind of relying on men the entire first part of the book, and then all of a sudden she realized it, and then the last part of the book was, more of her being strong, independent, I think I would have liked it a lot more. But just like looking back on it and kind of talking it through today, I really just don't think that I can rate it any higher than that, because it just, to me, it just wasn't what it should have been, in my opinion. As what the topics that she was trying to hit, I feel like it could have been more.
Okay, that's fair. So if you liked this episode or any of our other episodes, please subscribe to get access to bloopers randomly throughout each month or on the fifth Friday if there is one. We also have extra content, community chat, and more on Patreon. You can find our free episodes each Friday on any podcasting platform.
You can also send us book suggestions, comments, or general inquiries to our email at likewereadthem@karlempodcast.com. You can join us on Fable, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram for more engagement from us and the latest news. Karl, do you want to let them know what we're reading next?
Yes, so our next book is Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. I'm very excited for this book. Episode
9
comes out on May 2nd. Episode
10
comes out on May 9th. The blurb for this book is January 15th, 1978 is a night of promise. A serial killer's escape in Aspen, Colorado couldn't be further from the minds of the busy young women at the top sorority on Florida State University's campus in Tallahassee. Sorority president Pamela Shoemaker spends her Saturday night glued to her desk, cradling her textbook like a pillow. Startled awake at 3 a.m. by a strange noise, she makes the fateful decision to investigate. What she finds outside her bedroom door is a scene of implausible violence. 2 of her sisters dead, 2 others maimed. It is the final murderous spree of the man the papers will soon dub the All-American Sex Killer, but Pamela doesn't know this yet. Nor does she know the story of 25-year-old Ruth Wackasky, I'm sorry if I butchered that, who 4 years earlier disappeared from Seattle Lake Sammamish State Park in broad daylight, confounding police and shattering Ruth's roommate and best friend Tina Cannon. When the massacre at the Tallahassee sorority house becomes national news, Tina is certain it is the work of the same man who terrorized the Seattle area 4 years prior. She rushes to Florida on a collision course with Pamela and one last impeding tragedy. Bright Young Women is a story of 2 women who demanded answers to questions nobody else would ask. What happened to Ruth the day she went missing? And how did a serial killer from the Pacific Northwest set his sights on a sorority house in Florida? Toggling between those nightmarish days in 1798 and a letter that brings Pamela and Tina together in the present, the astonishing truth is revealed, along with a portrait of the extraordinary women who saw past the media's glorification of the Kennedy of killers for who he really was. And let me preface this. First of all, this is fiction, but the serial killer and the crimes and some of the victims in this book are loosely based on Ted Bundy and his victims. So going in, you should be aware of that, and there are definitely trigger warnings, so definitely check those out before diving in. But we appreciate you tuning into this episode, and we can't wait to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to join us over on Fable so we can discuss as we read, and as always, we promise to call them like we read them.
Damn, so